right, good morning, guys.
Good morning.
All right. So, you guys all have your notes uploaded into Notability?
Yes.
All right, awesome. So today in our lesson, we're going to be learning about the age of absolutism. All right, we've talked a little bit about absolutism already and what it means to be an absolute monarch. Today we're going to be looking at a specific example of that in France. His name's King Louis XIV. So we'll be learning about him. Before we do that, let's take a look and review what we've already gone over. All right, so just in general, absolutism. What is absolutism? Yeah, Sophia.
It's when the people don't have any rights and the king has all the power.
Yeah, perfect. Right, so think of absolute, right? Absolute power. This ultimate authority, this ultimate power that takes place within the king's hands. And she said, the people don't have many rights. And that's correct. There's no thing like a constitution in an absolute monarchy. We're not protecting the rights of the people. There's no thing like freedom of speech or freedom of press. Right? What the king says goes. And we saw this in the example of England. Right? The absolute monarchies in England. The civil war that took place in England. And that revolution, and we called it a glorious revolution, right? Why was this revolution considered glorious? Joey?
It was glorious because there was no fighting or bloodshed.
Yeah, good, right? It was this peaceful overthrow of power that put in place a constitutional monarchy. Right? The people had rights. Okay, we saw that as the outcome of the Glorious Revolution. Right? What was that big outcome of the Glorious Revolution? Yeah, Glenn?
The creation of the English Bill of Rights.
Yeah, this English Bill of Rights that guaranteed the rights of the people. It guaranteed their constitutional rights. It protected them. It limited the power of the king. Alright? So that's the absolute monarchy that we saw in England. Like I said, today we're going to be looking at the absolute monarchy of King Louis XIV. So here are our outcomes, right? Our objectives, what we need to achieve in today's lesson. Alright, our objectives. 1, identifying how King Louis XIV himself characterized this idea of an absolute monarch. Then we'll determine, was this system of government, was his ruling style effective? Did he have success in ruling this way? Then last but not least, once we get through the notes, you guys are going to be reading a short reading on a day in the life of Louis XIV. He lived in kind of an interesting way. And so you'll read about that, and you'll analyze his life. Okay, so those are our objectives. That's what we need to accomplish today. So here is the man himself, King Louis XIV. Look at that hair. Right? Now, like I said, we're talking about France and absolute monarchies. Now, for the time period, Louis lived for a very long time. He reigned over France for a very long time. In fact, he's the longest lasting monarch in European history. Right? About over 70 years he ruled as king. So let's look back at his early life, right? Where did his life begin? Well, it says here he was born in 1638, so we know we're going to start there. Born in 1638 to his parents, King Louis XIII and his mother, Anne. So before Louis was born, his parents were married for 23 years. And they had been trying to get pregnant. They had been trying to create a child, right? The heir to the throne. They needed an heir. And they've been trying, and they weren't having any success. And so ultimately they think it's not going to happen. Right? After 23 years of trying something and it's not happening, you kind of put your hands up and say, guess it's just not in the cards. Until Louis comes along, right? And it was this shock. I mean, they couldn't believe the fact that they were pregnant. So they named him in a way to represent that. Alright, so they named him Louis du Denis, which means gift of God. Saying this son was a gift from God. Now imagine starting your life, and immediately from day one you're labeled as this gift from God. Right? There's kind of this divine feeling that comes with that, right? Almost like you were here for a purpose. God has directly impacted your life. You have this connection to God. Right? And Louis, when he becomes king, he's really going to play up this idea that, you know what, yeah, I really was this gift from God. Right? And therefore, I deserve to have complete power. Right? So, gift of God. That's little Louis there. That's his mother. Now, before his monarchy, before Louis XIV is put on the throne, France went through this period of time where the kings did not have much power. We say it's this time of forgettable kings. Yes, they were monarchs, but they weren't necessarily ultimate and absolute monarchs. In fact, the kings had these royal ministers put in place that would help them. Most of the time, this was a cardinal from the Catholic Church. Right, so these high officials within the Catholic Church. And they were sent to live with the king and to help the king with political affairs. Right, be their political diplomat. And more often than not, this royal minister had more power and more influence than the king himself. Hence why we refer to this time as this period of forgettable kings. The symbol of the French monarchy at the time was this symbol right here, the fleur de lis, the lily flower. Alright, now, later on in the notes, we're going to talk about this mass exodus of French citizens leaving France. They were being persecuted. They needed to go elsewhere. And a lot of them came to North America. In part of the United States today. Now, it wasn't the United States at the time, but it's part of the United States today. You guys ever heard of New Orleans? Right? So New Orleans, they have this city, or the part of the town called the French Quarter. Right? This influence of French culture. Yes, Dad, what's up?
Can I say fantastic?
1 second, okay. I will have it for you 7 period.
7?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So, this fleur de lis, right, this lily flower, connecting it to the French Quarter in New Orleans. New Orleans is a football team, right? New Orleans Saints. You guys know what symbol is on the helmet of the New Orleans Saints? This right here, right? In reference back to New Orleans ties to French heritage. So for a very long time, this is the symbol of the French monarchy, right? This is on the flags, this is on the money. This symbol is what French citizens associate with the king. And it's very pretty, right? We'll give them that. But it's also a flower, right? There's not much weight. There's not much power that comes with a flower. That rhymes, power with a flower. Louis is going to change that. Okay, he's going to change that, so keep that in the back of your minds. Now, like we said, kings at this time had these royal ministers. The royal minister to Louis XIII, Louis XIV's father, was this man, Cardinal Richelieu. That's his picture here. You know you're powerful when somebody paints your face 3 times in one painting. That's how I associate his power. Right? So Cardinal Richelieu worked directly with Louis XIV's father, right? Was a political advisor, helped him through things. Richelieu passes away, this man takes his place, Cardinal Mazarin. All right, Cardinal Mazarin works, like we said, as a political advisor. Now, a big event takes place in 1643. Louis's father, King Louis XIII, passes away, somewhat unexpectedly at a pretty young age. So this happens in 1643. Now remember, Louis XIV himself was born in 1638. So when his father dies, Louis is only 4 years old. 4 years old. Can you be a king at 4 years old and rule effectively? I mean, it might be cute, right? Put a little 4-year-old, give him this big crown, put him on the throne, say, oh, look how adorable that is, right? But he's not going to be able to pass public policy or change the economic status of the state, right? So he needed help. He needed groomed to become king. So yes, in 1643, technically Louis XIV is king. But since he's 4 years old, he needs to have advisors. Hence Cardinal Mazarin and his mother, Anne. And so they're grooming Louis from a young age, saying, this is how a king is supposed to behave. Right? Teaching him about public policy, teaching him about economics, teaching him about warfare. Cardinal Mazarin really acted as this father figure to Louis. Right? They had a very close relationship. Well, Cardinal Mazarin, just like all of us will, he passes away. Now, when Cardinal Mazarin dies, Louis is 21 years old. All right, so he's 21 years old. And at this point, he's ready. Right? He is ready to fully take all total control. So rather than appointing another royal minister when Cardinal Mazarin dies, Louis XIV says, we're going to end that. No more royal ministers. No more advisors. I am in total control as the king. One ruler, and that's it. We can start to see a change here, right? A move towards more of an absolute, ultimate monarchy, where the king has complete and total control. Well, that's what Louis is putting in place. Now, earlier in the notes, I told you what the symbol of the French monarchy was. What was that symbol? Right, the flower, right? The fleur-de-lis, the lily flower. Louis is going to change that. He's now going to make the official symbol of the French monarchy the sun. He will be referred to as the Sun King. Right? The Sun King. He said he wants to be the source of light for his people, for the people of France. Now let's think about a sun, right? Especially in the context of our universe. The sun. Right? It might make sense to us why he would want to be known as the Sun King, and why he would want to be associated with the sun. So that's what I want you to do. I want you to answer this question on the next slide. Right? It says here, King Louis XIV uses the sun as his monarchy symbol. Why would Louis favor the symbol of a sun over a flower? I want you to answer that on your own. another minute just to finish up. All right, let's share some of our thoughts together here. What did we write down for this question? Yeah, Sophia.
I wrote that the sun is like what helps the flower live. Like the sun is the reason for the flower, so the sun is the more powerful.
Perfect. Right? We have this symbol, the flower, right? So France is associated with the flower, but where does that flower get its strength from? From the sun, right? The flower needs the sun in order to survive. So if France is the flower, France needs the sun, right? France needs the king in order to survive. Good. What else? What other ideas? Yeah, Dominic?
I said, like, the sun is, like, really bright, so, and he might want his people, or he might want to be, like, the light for his people, so they can follow them.
So they can follow him, right? So he can provide light so they can follow him, right? They can look to him, right? We all know where the sun is in the sky, right? We can look to it, we can see it, we can observe it, and we use it. Same with Louis for the people of France, right? He wanted all the people of France to look to him, to admire him. Okay, good. Any other ideas? Yeah.
I wrote that the sun is the source of human light and the king is like a ruler of all humans in the kingdom.
Good. So the king is like the ultimate factor in terms of the kingdom, right? Just like the sun is with human life. Without the sun, there is no human life. Without the king, there is no kingdom. John?
It said in the slide above that he fostered himself as the son of king, so he probably accepted that. And he wanted the symbol to be the sun because he's like super special and the God's gift.
Yeah, going back to that idea of a gift from God, right? This gift from God in the heavens. And the sun is up near the heavens. Also, everything in the universe revolves around what? The sun, right? So in his mind, everything in the kingdom should revolve around him. Right? We see the connections here? Perfect. So the Sun King, King Louis XIV, is absolute monarch. So let's figure out, right? We said that he's starting to take absolute control. Right? So how? How is he doing this? That's what we're going to look at now. And we can look at a couple of quotes from Louis XIV that show this absolute power. The first one up here, and pardon my French, I'm not the best at it. L'état c'est moi. Right? L'état c'est moi. Now what this means is I am the state. L'état c'est moi. I am the state. There's a pretty strong connotation that goes with that, is there not? That I am the state. He's not saying I am the leader of the state, or I am in charge of the state. He's saying I am the state. So without him, there is no state. Without Louis, there is no France. Right? He said, I represent all that is France. Without me, France would not, would cease to exist in a way. Right? It wouldn't be as strong as it is now. Would you say that this quote shows that he wants to be a complete, ultimate ruler? Yes, I would agree with you. And he backed that up with his actions. Louis was the ultimate micromanager. You ever met those type of people that they need to be involved in every single decision? Right? They always need their approval before you can do anything. Louis was that example. Right? Whether it be like passing the budget of the French economy, or signing off on a passport, an individual passport, needed to be ran by Louis first. He needed to sign off on it. He was involved in every single political decision in France. Would you say that's absolute power? Yeah. You could say absolute. Now, the ultimate goal of King Louis XIV was to create un roi, un law, un foi. Un roi, un law, un foi. Once again, pardon my French. What that means is one king, un roi, one law, and one faith. One king, one law, one faith in France. Not multiple faiths, not, a king and advisors. Not a constitution and a Bill of Rights. No. One king, Louis XIV. One law, whatever he says goes. One faith, Louis's faith, which was Catholicism. So let's look at how he accomplished this. One king, one law, one faith. Alright, like we said, Louis did not want to share the power with anybody else. He didn't want advisors. He didn't want anybody to have the wealth or power that he had. So he limited the power of the nobility. He really put them in their place. And the way in which he did this was that he required a lot of the nobility to come live and work, bless you, at his big, beautiful palace, the Palace of Versailles. Now you might say to yourself, well, that's not so bad, right? I get to live and work in a beautiful palace. That's awesome. You're going to be reading about just what the nobles had to do while they were living there. It's not so awesome. They needed to meet all of Louis' demands. They always needed to, if Louis was giving a speech or a talk, they needed to be there. Louis always liked to have a voice. Alright, but they went to this big palace of Versailles. And this is a symbol of Louis' power. The Palace of Versailles. Alright, take a look here. Now, historically, the monarchs of France lived in the capital city, which was Paris. Well, there was a civil war that took place. You don't need to know the context of the Civil War, but Louis and his family left Paris and went to this hunting lodge, the Royal Hunting Lodge at Versailles. It's about 15 miles away from Paris. And originally it wasn't anything that special. Anything that out of the ordinary for a monarch to live or be at. Until Louis made it his permanent residence. And then he completely renovated the place and made it the largest palace in all of Europe. So I have some facts here about the Palace of Versailles that I just wrote down. So the overall area, including the palace and the land of which it's on, is over 2,000 acres. That land, over 2,000 acres. Now maybe some of you are saying, well, I don't know how big an acre is, right? Well, let's look at the size of the palace itself. All right, we measure things in square feet. If you're looking for a house, you say, all right, how many square feet does it have? All right, the square footage of just the palace itself is over 700,000 square feet. Now compare that to my house. My house is 1,500 square foot. 1,000. The palace is over 700,000 square feet. It is massive. It is ginormous. This room right here is known as the Hall of Mirrors. Look how beautiful it is. Look how extravagant it is. But also keep in the back of your minds how much money it would cost to create something like that. Costs a lot of money, right? Where do you think you're getting that money from? Taxes. Tax the people, right? Increase their taxes. Think that might cause a little bit of resentment? Yeah. Yeah. Eventually that resentment is going to lead into revolution later on down the road. Alright, so creating one king. Right here. Limiting the power of the nobility, increasing the size of his establishment at the Palace of Versailles. One faith. Right, like we said, Louis was a devout Catholic. And in his mind, he believed everybody in France should be Catholic. Except we've already been down this road before. We learned about this when we studied the Reformation. Right? There was civil war in France between Catholics and Protestants. Civil, deadly war. And so finally, King Henry of Navarre, King Henry IV, who was Louis XIV's grandfather, passed the Edict of Nantes. Right? And that Edict of Nantes allowed for open religious practice. You know, if you wanted to be a Huguenot Protestant, go right ahead. If you want to be a Catholic, that's fine. Right? You won't be persecuted, you won't be put in jail, you won't be fined. You can practice your religions freely. Well, Louis XIV, like we said, only wants one faith, Catholicism. So he revokes, he takes away that Edict of Nantes. It says there's one faith in France, and that's Catholicism. So in a way, he's forcing conversions. And he did this in a variety of ways. He would allow soldiers to have free reign over anything they wanted to do inside of a Protestant's house. You know, so if a Protestant was living in France, a soldier could then go into that house, have sex with the wife, steal their belongings, right? Eat their food, drink their drinks, right? Have free reign with no consequences. So if that's happening to you, you might just go ahead and convert to Catholicism. Or you leave. Like we said before, right? A lot of French Protestants come to North America and settle in Louisiana, right? Those French quarters that we just talked about earlier. So, is Louis really caring about the rights of the people right now? No, right? Not at all. Now, another big characteristic of Louis XIV's reign as king was his love for war. He waged multiple wars as the King of France. In fact, during time of war, he had the largest army in history. Over 400,000 soldiers. So it's very impressive, right? It's very, very impressive. But it also costs money. Once again, taxes. Does he care that he's raising the taxes on the people? No. Right? He doesn't care about their rights. It's, I need that money to fight my wars. But why do you think he would fight so many wars? John?
He wanted more power.
Good. Wanted more power. Right? I have a neighbor next to me. If I can take from him, that increases my wealth, that increases my power. It also increases my prestige and fame. Right? We said already that he likes to care what people think about him. Right? The Son King, gift of God. Well, if he can wage war and have success in those wars, that myth goes even further. Right? So it's about fame, and it was about power. So, just to wrap things up, right? We're saying he's doing all of these things to increase his power, to increase his wealth. But what's happening to the people of France? Kind of getting left out, right? Their rights, their privileges, their freedoms are getting trampled on. So, all of these changes come at the expense of the French people. So in terms of the legacy of Louis XIV, right, his overall legacy, his impact on France, trying to ask the question, was he successful as a leader? Well, by waging all of those wars, he really left France surrounded by enemies. And like we said earlier, in order to pay for all these wars, in order to pay for the Palace of Versailles, it came from the taxes of the people. And those taxes became so high, and unemployment became so high, that most French people, by the time Louis dies, are living in poverty. He's living it up fancy style in the palace, but the French people, they're struggling. And we can tell a lot about Louis' success, or lack thereof, by his words to his successor. Louis is about to die, and he's talking to the next king in line, who is actually Louis' great-grandson. Louis XIV outlived most of his immediate relatives. So the next person in line is his great-grandson, who is 5 years old when Louis is dying. And he gives him this message. He says, you are about to become a great king, right? Talking to his great-grandson. You are about to become a great king. Do not imitate me, either in my taste for building, Palace of Versailles, or in my love of war. Live in peace with the nations. Strive to relieve the burdens of your people, of the French people, in which I have been so unfortunate as to fail. Those are Louis' words to his great-grandson, the next king of France. So what does Louis think about his job as king? Does he think he's done a good job? Okay, how do we know that? How do we know that from his words? Let's go, Chris.
It says, do not imitate either my taste for building or my love of war.
Yeah, do not imitate me, right? If he thinks I'm the greatest king there ever was, man, do exactly what I just did. Right? I've given you the blueprint. Repeat it. Yeah. Do not imitate me. Yeah, Tori?
And tell him to live in peace with the nation.
Is that how Louis lived? No. Right? He's saying live in peace with the nations, whereas Louis, like you said, has this lust for war. Right? Good. Erica?
It also says, I have been so unfortunate as to fail.
Perfect. What does that say?
I did not do good.
Yeah, I did not do good. Right? Unfortunately, I have failed. Don't repeat what I did. Perfect. So, what I'd like you guys to do is to go ahead and answer these two review questions. Number one, why is King Louis XIV considered an absolute monarch? Right? Which characteristics of King Louis XIV shows that he is an absolute monarch? I want you to use specific examples. Then number 2, explain what we just talked about. Was King Louis XIV's leadership style successful? Why or why not? Alright, while you're doing that, I'm going to pass out your homework for tonight. We're going to get started on it now. Like we said, you're going to read a day in the life of Louis XIV. Right? Reading about his behaviors at his palace. What was the name of that palace again? Versailles, right? Palace of Versailles. And it wasn't just King Louis XIV that lived at the palace. Who was living there with him? Nobility, right? So in this reading, what you're going to look at is not only Louis XIV's behaviors, but also the behaviors of the nobility and how Louis kept them in check. So can I get, first, you can get one. There you go. Can I get a volunteer to read for us this first introduction paragraph? Yeah, thanks, George.
For much of his reign, Louis XIV resided at the palace of Versailles. There he established a large court, which the country's leading nobles were expected to attend. Life in Versailles revolved around the king and the simplest events of his day, such as getting dressed or going to bed, were accompanied by pomp and ceremony, in which the court was required to take part. In the excerpt below from the memoirs of Saint Simon, one of Louis's Cottars, nobles who lived at court in Versailles, the Deputy Saint Simon described the typical days at Versailles. As you read the excerpt, consider what the day's activities tell you about the character.
Perfect, thank you very much. So, first of all, we can get a glimpse at this Sun King, right? It says, life at Versailles revolved around the king. Right? Just like everything in the universe revolves around the sun. So it says, everything that Louis did, whether it be getting dressed, eating breakfast, or giving a speech, nobles and courtiers, his assistants, were required to be there with him. So I want you to read this over. Alright, and then you'll see there are 4 response questions that I'd like you to answer on loose leaf. I'm going to collect those tomorrow. Alright? Asking you, what information does this reading suggest about his life? But then also, as you look down, I'm asking you to consider on your own, what are some actions that you believe are necessary of a king? Right? How should a king behave? What should a king be doing every single day? And then, is Louis doing that? Right? Is Louis meeting that expectation? Alright, so that's what I'd like you to do tonight. Tomorrow I'll collect, like I said, your loose leaf from you, and we'll go over these 2 review questions. Okay? Any questions on my expectations? Oh, okay, we got about a minute left until the bell rings. Go ahead and start reading on this. Alright, make sure when the bell does ring, you put it somewhere safe. You're bringing it back with you tomorrow. Alright, awesome. Alright guys, have a good one.